Are you rolling?
Scene one, take one.
Hello, and welcome to 32 Sounds. I was sitting at my kitchen table late one night thinking about these tapes. Voicemail messages that I saved over the years. How does a little piece of tape hold a person, make it seem like they're alive? I was wondering why sound has such a strange power.
I love this song.
I'm listening to a whole other world down there. Aquatic insects, bugs, fish. I think of sound as being a channel of connection.
A lot of people asked me, why sound? All I could say is that something was driving me to make this movie, even if I couldn't say exactly what.
Hello, and welcome to 32 Sounds.
That's how you do it. Okay.
That was the trailer for the feature documentary 32 Sounds, and this is Factual America. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Each week I watch a hit documentary and then talk with the filmmakers and their subjects. 32 Sounds is an immersive documentary and sensory experience from Oscar-nominated and award-winning director Sam Green. The film explores the phenomenon of sound and its power to bend time, cross borders, and shape our perception of the world around us. Join us as we talk with Sam about his groundbreaking visual essay dedicated to sound with music by J.D. Samson. Stay tuned. Sam Green, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you?
Good. Very good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing well, and just wanted to remind our listeners and watchers that Sam's just released. They're going to have a theatrical release of his film 32 Sounds with music by J.D. Samson. Nationwide theatrical release in the U.S. on April 28th. Any global plans are you aware of yet?
Yeah, we're working on it. We have
Yeah.
a company who's doing international distribution, and we'll see where that goes.
Okay, well, keep an eye out on this, and for our listeners based and viewers based in the U.S., do check this out. Maybe get us started. Maybe give us a synopsis. What is 32 Sounds all about?
32 Sounds is a kind of essay film documentary about sound, which is a huge and ungainly topic, and it uses the device of just 32 different sounds as a kind of way to structure a meditation about sound. And by thinking and talking about sound and exploring sound, the film touches on all sorts of other issues like time and time passing and the oddness of our experience as people.
Okay. And how did you decide to make a film about sound? I mean, you just wake up one day and say, this ungainly subject is one that deserves a documentary treatment.
I wish. That's the movie version of it,
Exactly.
It's almost hard to remember, but I made a film. The previous film I made was about the Kronos Quartet.
Right.
And they're a great classical ensemble, and it got me thinking a lot about sound, and also sound in the context of cinema and how sound works in the context of cinema. And so all that was in my head, and then the pandemic started. It was
Right.
March of 2020. Yeah.
Oh.
And all my screenings were canceled. I had a lot of time on my hands, and I read a book, and there was a reference in the book, a line that said, Annea Lockwood, a composer,
Right.
has recorded the sound of rivers for more than 50 years. And that sentence just intrigued me. I'd never heard of this person, Annea Lockwood. But I love the sound of rivers, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. And so I just started looking into who this Annea Lockwood person was, and I was knocked out by her music and her art. She's been making work for about 60 years, and it was the early pandemic, so I found her website and I just emailed her and I said, "Hi, I'm interested in sound. Could we talk sometime?" And she said, "How about this afternoon?" And nobody was doing anything back in those days, and so we struck up a Skype email conversation that lasted several months, and in some ways still lasts to this day. But she was a great muse, and she's so smart. She's a sort of central person in the movie, and
Yeah.
wonderful spirit, smart as heck about sound, thoughtful, makes great work. Just a real muse for me. And so that was the spark of the movie in a way.
And you've made a short about her, haven't you? But was that separate? I mean, not separate, but was that the initial intent, or it just has kind of fallen out of doing this?
It sort of fell out of doing this. There was a Scottish music festival that asked me if I would make a little video about her, and I said sure. I thought I would do it in a weekend, and it ended up being 30 minutes long. So that was sort of a side little spin-off thing.
Okay. And so what were your thoughts going into this project? I mean, you started talking with Annea Lockwood, but do you have generally, and maybe specifically this project, do you have a story arc in mind, or do you just kind of dive in and see where things take you?
It's a bit more of the latter. The way I tend to work is I am sort of magnetized by something, an image or a line in a book or a story, something, and somehow, I'll sort of poke around. I'm a curious person, so I'm often looking into things, but mostly it just is a one-time affair and that's it. But sometimes something will kind of just get under my skin and percolate, and I kind of keep coming back to it, and you get more and more interested, and that leads to other things, and it just starts to snowball. And that's what this did. And at first, in my own process at least, it's hard to know what it's about. Why am I so interested in sound? And over time you begin to understand your motivations, and it's almost as you make a film to understand why you're compelled by that subject. So with this, it was certainly that. I mean, I love sound, and there's a ton of interesting sounds and stories about sounds, but in a way, this project is more and comes out of deeper feelings than that.
I mean, you were saying, I think it's even you mentioned it in the film towards the end, not to give anything away, but I think a friend says, do you know where this is leading you? And you say, I have no idea. And
she said, told me, which was like a pretty, that's a verbatim quote, that conversation, that dialogue is just verbatim the way it happened. And sometimes the people in your life see things that you more clearly than you can see it. And that certainly was the case here.
And so so let's talk about sound. I guess there's, as you say, it's this very ungainly subject, or could be. But maybe, what do we get wrong about sound, do you think?
Well, sound, I think it's funny because each of the senses is unique and has its own qualities. But I think with seeing and visual things, they're all very familiar, and we talk about them, the image, we understand the way our relationship to the image, and it's pretty out there, and there's a language for it, and a long conversation about visual matters. People have written many books, but sound is odd, and you are a person who traffics in sound. I'm sure you've thought of this. Sound is mysterious, and it's hard to put your finger on it, and just by its very nature, it's ephemeral. If you have a painting, it's on the wall,
right?
You go to sleep, you come back, and the same painting on the same wall. And a lot of the visual world is that. Sound is time and air, and it's gone. And until very recently, when we could record things, it truly was ephemeral. And so it's mysterious in that sense, and it works on us in odd ways. And there's not a lot of language for it either. I mean, there's some in my own experience, there's some clunky language, like sound is universal, it brings us all together, or just some sort of cliches like that. But real insight about sound is rare, I think. So I liked it for that reason, and just the kind of mysterious nature of it, and the way it works in a powerful way. I say this in a film, but you can see a photo of somebody you've loved who's gone, and you remember them in some way, what they looked like. But if you hear that person's voice, they're right in front of you. You can feel them, you can smell them, you could feel how they would feel if you gave them a hug. So sound really is a different kind of transport, I think.
Yeah, no, and I hadn't even thought of this, but at the same time, with memory, at least for me, speaking personally, visual memory sticks with me more than oral or audio in some ways. I mean, I will remember someone's face better than I would remember maybe their voice.
For sure. Well, it's hard to, it must be the way the brain works or something, that you can keep an image in your head, and a voice is slipperier, it just kind of dissipates.
Hey, we'll talk more about sound, but we're going to give our listeners and viewers a quick break. We'll be right back with Sam Green, the director and editor of 32 Sounds, with music by J.D. Samson. You're listening to Factual America. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Alamo Pictures to keep up to date with new releases or upcoming shows. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program, our guests, and the team behind the production. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with Sam Green, director and editor of 32 Sounds. Includes music by J.D. Samson, and it's having a nationwide, in the U.S., theatrical release on April 28th. We were talking about sound, and, so we're talking about, I asked you, what do we get wrong, or what we do we not understand? I mean, what is it? I think one thing that also and it kind of where you come to with it, it's in the film as well, is sort of how it shapes us, but also, this idea of, and you've said it's already very, it's ephemeral, lost sounds. I think it strikes me that we're in a world where we're getting more and more noise, but we're hearing less and less.
Yeah.
Is that a fair, you think, assumption?
I would say it's true. I mean, in a way, those are two sides of the same coin, because the more we're bombarded by noise, the more we need to close our ears, just out of self-protection. But it is true. I mean, I think, at least, like, I live in New York City. I think New York City was much louder, 100 years ago than it is now, actually. In some ways, I think cities have gotten quieter. But, there's the interesting thing now is you go into any store, restaurant, the elevator, there's music. It's very hard to find silence these days, or relative silence, I think. There's a lot of clutter, sonic clutter.
And you're, probably when you're trying to pitch this to broadcasters or whatever, they may not want to hear this, but your film has a lot of silence in it.
Yeah, I think it's unairable on television, really, because even there's a lot of black, nothing on the screen, and I think it's a rule in TV, like, you can't have more than 20 frames of black, or something like that.
Right. And you've had the, reference to, not just reference, but the thing about John Cage and others. I mean, I think, isn't there, even people have even said silence is another, it's not the right phrase for it, but it is another sound, isn't it? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's trite, but there is no such thing as silence. I mean, you could go into an anechoic chamber, but if you're sitting right now, there's a ton of a universe of sound, even in our conversation here.
So how does someone like yourself who makes your living in a visual medium go about making a film about sound?
A lot of head scratching. A lot of head scratching. No, to me, it was a great creative challenge.
Yeah.
Because film is so predominantly visual. And I do think it's true. You can only really focus on one sense at a time. If you're looking intently, you're not listening intently, and vice versa. So most of the time with film, you're looking intently. It's a medium for the eye, really. So how to scramble that, how to turn that on its head was one of the great creative challenges. And I do like, I for myself really like films that surprise you or you don't know where they're going. That's a great pleasure and a rare pleasure for me in cinema. So to try to scramble the normal engagement with the movie was fun. I would like to be an audience member being scrambled myself.
Right. And so that was going, it's not just for our listeners. So it's not just a film about sound. It's an immersive experience, isn't it? Or ideally.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have the fortune of seeing it in a theater or a cinema, but I did listen.
But if you wore headphones,
yeah, I did. So
I think that's actually a great way to see these days. There's some thought of like, oh no, if you're watching it at home, that's a second-rate experience to sitting in a theater. But watching at home with headphones is a very intimate and powerful way to watch something. And there is that thing. I'm not going to say this in a judgmental way. I've watched movies and checked my email and stuff like that. And, that's not the kind of engagement I'm looking for here. But the idea that one is at home with headphones, I think that can be a striking way to watch a movie. And somebody I know who I respect a lot, a filmmaker, said to me recently, I watch all movies now on my phone. And I said, oh, no, that's like, what? That's terrible. And he said, no, look. He picked up his phone. He said, I lie on my bed with headphones and put the phone right there. So it's like I'm in an IMAX theater. I thought, that's actually pretty great. The image is really big. You got headphones on. You are in an IMAX theater. So there's a lot of great ways to watch things, I think.
I will say it makes me feel better. I'm often watching them on a laptop, but because we've got one good TV in the house and it's usually occupied. But I will say there is something. I have it pretty close, and also I find I need to have those earphones on to really hear what is being said. And that's one thing I did with your film is I watched it, and then the second time, I won't say it was 100% undivided attention, but I just listened to it. I didn't have the. I was doing other things, but I just had the audio on, and that was really interesting. Even the whatever long periods of silence. Yeah. You interview someone who's deaf, so there's not much. There's silence there as well. But no, it's very interesting, and I think what I found too. I don't know what you hope people take away. You probably want people to take whatever they want to take away from the experience. But I've just found myself in the last 24 hours being very cognizant of every little noise and sound around me in a way that I don't think I had been for a long time, at least.
Well, that's music to my ears, to use a terribly clumsy
no pun intended,
phrase in this context.
Yeah.
But that actually is I'm not one of those filmmakers who wants to change people or change the world necessarily. Right. But I do feel like opening your ears can be incredibly pleasurable and can bring you back to the present and root you in your body, both of which are good and rare pleasures these days where we're all on devices. So hearing that makes me happy because I do think a movie about sound can encourage people to listen in a good way. Not in a way where like you got to do the work and listen. It's like
no, not at all.
And have a lot of pleasure. John Cage always said his favorite sound in the world was the sound of traffic outside his apartment on 6th Avenue, and traffic can be an amazing sound if you pay attention.
But no, Miles Davis. Miles Davis said, just the sound of sneakers on a basketball court. He could,
That's a great sound.
and he got music from, some of his music was inspired by that.
Wow, that's an
Yeah.
awesome sound. And it's funny because you could play that sound for anybody and people would probably immediately recognize it. It's a very recognizable sound.
I mean, I love the stuff with the Foley artist.
Oh, she's great. It made me want to be a Foley artist.
Me too.
But I think being a Foley artist is sort of being like a typewriter repair person, or it's not a growth industry at this point. But
Right.
she was so wonderful and so smart about sound in her own way.
Yeah. I mean, things you would have never, not to give too much away, but just scraping a car door across the floor,
It's funny too because I realized in filming her in her studio that I think part of being a good Foley artist is being a hoarder, because it's an excuse to keep anything, like anything. This bag of dirt, will probably come in handy sometime, So she's got like 100 pairs of shoes, and it's great.
Yeah. Well, and I think, there is that, you start off with a quote by, what's her name? Aggie Murch, is it?
Yeah, the quote is actually by Walter Murch.
Well, it's by Walter Murch, but because Walter...
The recording is by Aggie Murch.
Right, because there's that documentary about sound in cinema that he looms large in, and so it's very... loads of these people going around just recording all these sounds in nature, just so you have this. I guess before there was like digital libraries of things,
Yeah.
But one thing that we don't have that much time left with you, but one thing that it comes out also was you say something in there about the difficulty of a music in a film that's about sound.
Yeah.
And Annea Lockwood also sort of avoided music there for a little while for probably different reasons, but yeah, you've got music by J.D. Samson. So how do you get that to work?
That was hard, and I think, it's always a little bit of a tension with the composer, because of course they want the music to fill the movie, and the hard thing was to really let the sounds have enough space to be prominent. This couldn't be a movie where there was a lot of music under the sounds. You sort of need you can't have the sound of the womb with music under it. So the sounds sort of have to be center stage in a way, and the music has to float around the sounds and infuse them with feeling and also transport us. So it was a little bit of a challenge, and JD is very good spirited about it, and I think in the end realizes, wow, this is the right balance, and that's what makes the movie work. But even if it's less music than JD probably would want in the movie, it's the music that makes it work. If you had this movie without the music, it would be a pale, version of itself. It wouldn't have the emotional valence, and it wouldn't take you places in the way that it does, even if the music is subtle.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to leave this, and definitely to tell our audience that do check this out. It's 32 Sounds. It's going for a nationwide release in the U.S., theatrical release on April 28th. Sam Green, whom we've been talking with, is the director and editor, and it includes music by J.D. Samson. Sam, thanks so much for joining Factual America. It was a joy having you on.
Thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate it. Pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure talking with you, and good luck with you. I know you got a big press day ahead of you, so good luck with that. All right.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
See you. Bye. I also would like to thank those who helped make this podcast possible. A big shout out to Sam and Joe at Inner Sound Audio in York, England. Big thanks to Amy Ord, our podcast manager at Alamo Pictures, who ensures we continue getting great guests onto the show and that everything otherwise runs smoothly. Finally, a big thanks to our listeners. Many of you have been with us for 4 incredible seasons. Please keep sending us feedback and episode ideas, whether it is on YouTube, social media, or directly by email. Please also remember to like us and share us with your friends and family, wherever you happen to listen or watch podcasts. This is Factual America, signing off. You've been listening to Factual America. This podcast is produced by Alamo Pictures, specializing in documentaries, television, and shorts about the USA for international audiences. Head on down to the show notes for more information about today's episode, our guests, and the team behind the podcast. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Alamo Pictures. Be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing our films, and to connect with our team. Our homepage is alamopictures.co.uk.